Yak Gadget, made in America, based outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Yak Gadget offers all kinds of storage accessories, quick mount motor mounts, anchor systems, track mounted accessories, even paddles. Go to yakgadget.com and get your kayak decked out for your next trip out on the water.
The 153 Bait Company, based in Troy, Ohio, make everything from plastics to custom painted hard baits. Hook 'em hard and hook 'em often. All of our baits are made to order, and all of our hard baits are hand painted to order. So go to the153anglers.com to place your order today.
This segment is brought to you by Jig Masters. Step up your game with high-quality performance jigs, spinner baits, buzz baits, and more from jigmasters.com. And always, when in doubt, get the jig out.
You're listening to Bass Fishing for Noobs on the Paddle and Fin podcast with your hosts Ryan Milford and Sean Lavery.
What's going on, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of Bass Fishing for Noobs here on the Paddle and Fin podcast. I am the host, Sean Lavery. We are working on getting new intros for all the shows, so bear with me there. We'll have Ryan's image there for a little bit longer in memory of him. Ryan, I missed you, bud. But we are moving forward, and so tonight I'd like to welcome on another fellow Paddle and Fin host, Mr. Brad Hicks. Brad, thank you for joining us this evening.
Heck yeah, it's always fun coming on this show, man. I like it. It's like third or fourth time now.
Yeah, definitely. So I was really struggling to come up with a topic, and I've been kind of paying attention to Brad's Instagram lately, and he's been talking a lot about a technique that I've heard of, but never got a chance to throw. I own them. I just never broke them out, partially because I didn't know necessarily what situation I would use them in. And that is the Tokyo rig. So tonight we're going to cover the Tokyo rig. So Brad, you started throwing it in the rivers. Did you were you throwing it anywhere else before that, or you just thought you'd try it, or what got you into throwing the Tokyo rig?
Well, actually, I didn't throw it on the river first. I threw it on a local reservoir up here, and this reservoir goes from it's like a rocky bank, and then it just drops down to like 30 feet and then 40 feet at the bottom. So I went fishing with my buddy Chris Yak. He's a listener, so shout out to Chris.
What's up, Chris?
Yeah, I think he won the Noobs tournament last month too.
I was going to say, I saw he just edged out Susie on the last day, I think.
Yeah. Well, I fished with him quite a bit, and he was throwing the Tokyo rig, and he's like, "Yeah, man, this thing's been catching good fish for me." So I'm like, "Let me borrow one. I'm going to try it out," because I have this mindset when I try something new out. I'm like, I ain't putting it down until I catch fish on it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay.
I know, like all these baits, like. There's a lot I haven't thrown, but I know they will catch fish. It's only a matter of time, right? So I was like, all right, I'm going to throw this until I catch a fish. And it wasn't even 20 minutes later. And I caught like a 20-inch largemouth.
Wow.
Yeah,
I wish
awesome.
I had that kind of success. Usually I struggle a couple trips, and that's what really, I hate getting skunked. And so a lot of times if I am really struggling, I will bail on that quick and go for something or go back to my comfort zone. So I definitely have to get better at, coming to grips with skunking, because it does happen. And
oh yeah,
especially when you're learning. So,
oh yeah. Like I said, well, I thought this would be a good topic for the mindset.
Absolutely.
Because I completely changed my mindset around using new baits and stuff like that. I'm to the point where I'm not like, it sucks to skunk, but it's just like, all right, it's not as bad as a feeling as what it once was. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I know eventually it will pay off.
Right.
So that's how I've been looking at it, approaching new baits and new bodies of water and stuff like that.
I'm getting there slowly. I definitely don't take it as hard as I used to, but my skunks get fewer and far between now as I improve all around. So
yeah, that's always nice. Yeah. Even if you catch like a 10-inch fish or something, it's just like, all right, cool.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So to get off started, we'll kind of dive into what a Tokyo rig is. And I actually have one here with me. if you guys can see that. So basically what it consists of is a wide gap hook, usually. I guess it doesn't always have to be, but all the ones that I've seen are. And then you have that's actually tied to a swivel in the middle, which gets tied to your main line. And then you have this piece of wire that you can take a weight of your choosing. Usually I think bullet weights are the most popular. So you put your bullet weight on there and you bend it like so that your bullet weight is kind of stuck in the middle of the line. And then it kind of works like a drop shot, right? So the weight drag goes down on the bottom, and that leaves your whatever you have on the hook up in the air. So it's basically that.
Here we go. I'll share my screen for you.
Awesome.
There you go.
There you go. Yep. And that is the exact one that I have right now. I don't know who all makes them, but VMC is the one that I have.
I think VMC is the only one that makes them. It's their. Okay. I don't know if they're patented on the idea or what, but
okay. I did see it on when I was YouTubing to look for this topic and trying to find people to interview. I found a guy who was kind of making his own. It's a little more. It's much easier, I think, just to go buy the VMC ones. They're not that expensive.
No, it's like $4.99 for a 2-pack.
Yeah,
something like that.
And the idea behind having the weight down there and that wire is that if it gets snagged, it's going to snag the weight, and you can kind of pull it out, right?
Yeah, so, I haven't gotten snagged very much with it. Only time I will get snagged like major is if I'm like fishing something with riprap or like really thick chunks of concrete.
Right. And unfortunately, that's the Susquehanna for me. It is rocky as all get out. So it's Snag City. So that's part of the reason why I haven't thrown this as much is because I'm finally gotten to the point where I can use a Ned rig without snagging a ton. So I definitely want to give this a try when I get to that point. So go ahead.
Your river's not very deep though, is it?
Not generally, for the most part, especially now in the middle of the summer, is getting lower and lower. But there's spots that are deep, and it does slow down in those spots. It's not all rapids and current as in those deeper spots. But in the summertime, I usually kind of shy away from those just because I don't feel like the fish are there as much. I tend to target like the 5 to 6 foot deep depths. And I almost always use moving baits just because I feel like I cover water more effectively. I use a crankbait a lot. I started using that Rico popper like crazy. Like once the sun goes down behind the horizon, if anybody are listening, I'm spilling a little juice for the Susquehanna, but once the sun goes down behind the horizon, man, it's game on with the popper. I just went out last night and caught 5 and 15 minutes.
Jeez.
And it was as soon as the sun goes down behind the horizon, I just start throwing that, and it's like magic, man. They just start crushing it. And
I'll have to remember that because I don't have much success on the popper. I don't know why.
So that's where I started using it, and it was the weirdest thing because I always felt like I don't see anything else making this kind of action on. And I have, the Susquehanna is a mile wide, so you can see a long way away. And I'm like, nothing else on the surface looks like this. So that's why I didn't throw it for the longest time. So I'm like, well, they're going to think, well, that's kind of out of the ordinary. I'm not going anywhere near that. But it seems like it's the exact opposite. It draws them in, and, it usually doesn't take long and they start crushing it. So that's not really a moving bait per se, but it's definitely a lot different than, say, a Tokyo rig. So, I guess the closest thing I throw would be somewhat like it would be A, the Ned rig, and B, like a tube, dragging a tube. So
I was going to say, if you didn't want to throw the Tokyo rig in the river since it's not deep enough, you could always do like a Texas rig crawl, that's pegged. I mean, it's the same thing. It just won't hold it off the bottom.
Right. And I've done that, but with not a high degree of luck. But again, that was kind of in the beginning when I was just learning. So I know a lot better of the areas to throw now and that kind of thing. So I need to break out some of the old tactics that didn't work for me and see if now that I kind of understand a little bit better where to throw them. But speaking of that, so what generally do you see that says to you, hey, I should throw a Ned rig here?
Ned rig?
I mean,
Tokyo rig. Okay, I was gonna say, I throw the Ned rig everywhere.
Yeah.
Man. So I usually reserve that technique for deep, slow-moving water. The first spot that comes to mind, I know my river like the back of my hand, so I'm starting to learn that there's ledges and stuff out in the middle. So I mean, I'm going from like 3 feet down to 18 feet. I'm looking for spots like that with my fish finder, where I just cast it up shallow, where there's enough current, where it's not super fast, but there's just enough current, and I'm just dragging it down that ledge. And right in the middle of the river, it seems like the big fish have been there. I don't know what it is, but those big fish in the river seem like they act more like reservoir fish than they do river fish. I know typically you'll find fish in riffles and stuff like that in the dead of summer.
Right.
But I catch them there, but it seems like the bigger ones are always deeper. And it's funny because I was talking to my buddy about this today, Ryan Dahl. He's also a listener. He was like, I swear, man, those big fish seem to, he put in quotations, retire and go to deeper, slow-moving water when they get older. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not, but
I feel like the time of day has a lot to do with that too, because that on the Susquehanna they always talk about these rocky ledges and the boulders sticking out of the water. And like when I was out there yesterday in the morning, I threw behind those boulders, where they say you should throw, and it was like a dink fest, man. I had 20 total fish, but I think only 3 in the morning were over 12 inches. It was just dink after dink after dink, which still fun, but when you're looking for the big ones, sometimes it gets a little frustrating. And I was thinking that same thing. I'm like, man, this is definitely where the little ones are, but where the heck are the big ones? And I ended up going upriver away from those. There's kind of like a line that goes in my area that goes the whole way across the river. That I can kind of follow along. It's just rocks sticking out of the water. And I was there all morning. And like I said, I just wasn't finding the size. So probably like 11, I made a move up to, we have a bridge that goes across right in my area. And I started fishing the bridge piers and the shadows kind of on the bridge piers as the sun was getting higher. And I started finding size there, not numbers, but that's where I caught the 3 biggest ones I caught in the morning yesterday. And they were kind of hanging out right along those concrete bridge piers in the shadows there. So
that's a good spot for bigger fish too, because it gives them that point of ambush for bait fish to come by or crawl or whatever, and then it protects them from any current too. Like if it floods out. Right.
And that generally up by the bridge, it kind of, I don't know why, but the river kind of gets faster right at the bridge there as it's going through. Like above it or below it, I can kind of sit there and maintain my position, but there I almost have to anchor if I want to stay there and fish. So there's a little bit of current, but like you said, I think the bridge pilings kind of break that current a little bit, so they'll either send at the front end or the back end of them. Stuff. So that's kind of where I was anticipating trying this potentially.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I did a float yesterday, bridge abutment. I first cast over there. It goes from 6 to 17 feet. I got hit by a 17.5-inch smallmouth on the Tokyo rig.
Wow.
So you just got to be careful though, because there's a lot of log jams and stuff.
Yeah, the same with ours. Now this is a huge bridge. Like I said, it's a mile long plus. So there's a lot of, I think there's 15 bridge pilings the whole way across.
Jeez.
And so yeah, when Ryan and I were we were talking about rivers a while ago, and I take so much for granted when I hear you guys talking about a river, and I just in my mind I picture my river, the Susquehanna, and it's a mile wide, and he's like, no, it's like 100 feet wide.
Yeah.
What? So
you'll find this funny. My river has the one I caught the fish off yesterday, it has one bridge abutment right in the middle of the river. So one side of it is fast current, and then the other side is like a big giant eddy, and it's real shallow in that eddy, but it's weird. Yeah. I couldn't imagine like having that many abutments that you have. I'd be overwhelmed. Where do I start?
And there's actually 2 bridges within a half mile from each other, just upriver. There's the highway bridge, and then kind of like the the town bridge, the one that connects the town. So I could just paddle upriver another, half mile, if that, and be under another bridge with just as many pilings.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
plus,
you could jump
the whole way between. So
yeah, you could literally go upstream and just hit one abutment after another and just sit there all day long. Probably catch good fish.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I did in the afternoon when the rocks kind of stopped producing it at all. Is I headed up to the bridge and kind of worked my way. They always say, I heard that between the. Actually, how many did I say? Actually, there's 30. There's 30.
30. Yeah, you said 17.
Yeah. I was thinking 15, but 15 is the middle because they told me if you fish the 9th through the 15th kind of bridge abutments, then those are the deepest ones.
Mm-hmm.
And those actually do go, 10, 15 deep or foot deep, maybe a little bit deeper in the very middle. But the ones on the ends are shallow. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, and you can kind of see whether they're relating deep or shallow as you look around. So
yeah, that sounds like a perfect spot for a Tokyo rig or Ned rig. That'd be a good spot for it.
I kind of shied away from the Ned rig in the deep part just for the length of time it takes to get down. So plus there is a little more current, like I said there. So most of the Ned rigs I throw are pretty light. So
I throw the 5th ounce with those.
Okay.
I like to be on the bottom as fast as possible.
Yeah. Now, when I fish by the rocks, and that's what took me the longest time to get used to throwing the Ned rigs. Everybody I talked to is like, "Oh, you should throw the Ned rig. You should throw the Ned rig." And I was kind of throwing it in that 5-foot kind of open spot, and I was just letting it tick along the bottom. But again, I felt like I wasn't covering much water, so I'm a lot more effective with the Ned rig when I can pitch it right at the those rocks, the sticking out. So I know that if I cast it up right by the rocks and it sits there, then I know I'm in an eddy, and it's that's where the fish are going to be. If it immediately comes back downstream at me, then I know I'm in the current, which isn't always bad, but they definitely seem to kind of stick. If I know if I can get the Ned rig to stop and stay, then it's at the spot it should be. And that's usually where I've been catching fish.
That makes sense.
That's the way I've been, having the luck that I've had with it. Again, because I'm more target shooting at that point than just kind of fishing the wide open and hoping I drift past one that's hungry. So
so to kind of relate the Tokyo rig to that, I don't use it as a search bait. I only throw it in the areas where I know there's fish. So
okay, yeah, and I think that's probably how I'm gonna first take my shot at it, is just see on those big bridge pilings, and then also the rocks, and just see if it works as good as the Ned rig. Because the Ned rig, I've been doing really well with the Ned rig, just crushing it. So I'm kind of excited to try this. So
heck yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to throw them in the lakes either, because I know you said you like to fish the wacky rig deep too, right?
Yes. Yep. I use a weighted jig almost everywhere I fish the wacky, just because it gets down there faster. So.
If you can fish the wacky rig deep, you'll have no issue with the Tokyo rig.
Okay.
Because it gets down to like 30 feet in a couple seconds.
That might be really good, because sometimes I struggle in the deep stuff on my local lake, and it was weird. Like last year when I was talking to a guy, and he was actually dropping thermometers down, checking the different depths, and I could not believe the difference in water temperature from the surface to the those 30-foot spots. It was like if the top water was like 70 degrees, down there it was like 45. It was crazy.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I was like, there's no way that's true. And he's like, he took a picture of the screen and showed me. He's like, yeah. And right there on his depth finder, right next to the temperature was of the screen that had the temperature was like 3 fish.
Wow.
Right. So they definitely go to that colder spot. So
yeah, I've always been curious about that. Like, I know you guys done like thermocline episodes and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know much about it, but I've always been curious about that depth change and how cold the water is. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, and it gets to a point, I guess, the one guy we were talking to about it, he was saying that eventually the lake will turn over, where, the fish that were forced below that area will then be forced above it. And then that's when you have to try and fish suspended, which I'm absolutely good at.
Yeah, me either. Yeah, that's why you see, like in a lot of these reservoirs and stuff, you see a lot of dead white bass after the turnover when it gets real hot.
Yep, when it flips, then they struggle a little bit, and
Yeah.
that's usually when I go shallow, especially because then I'm like, well, they have to go somewhere, and I think they're going to go someplace they can feel at least somewhat comfortable. So,
did you hear the reel down this week? The juice that Drew Gregory dropped
I'm trying to think
about
refresh
fishing vegetation and why certain spots hold fish even if it's shallow and stuff like that.
I'm trying to think. I might have to go check that out.
Man.
So I might have missed that.
My mind was blown. I was like, dude, that was awesome.
Well,
That's
I
some good
know what I'm
information.
listening to on my way to work tomorrow.
Heck yeah.
I saw he just got third in the Susquehanna BOS or Hobie BOS.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep. And Drew, no, not Drew. Jody Queen won it again, second year in a row.
Jeez. That's awesome. I didn't know who won it. So that's
congrats,
cool.
Jody. That's awesome. You know, we'll have to have him back on here and talk about that because he came on last year and spilled a little juice about what helped him last year. Although this year he said it was the jackhammer. So
yeah, not surprised.
So, all right. Well, back to the Tokyo rig. So, so we know what it is. What kind of plastic do you usually put on there?
Lately I've been throwing the Z-Man turbo crawls on it. Just because it's Elastec and it lasts forever. I just bought some missile D-bombs, and those have been catching fish for me.
That's more of like a beaver style, right?
Yeah, it's ribbed kind of all the way down the body. It looks really good. I'm going to mention this because my buddy we were fishing at the reservoir. I was throwing a crawl, and he threw a Cinco on his, and he was twitching it on the Tokyo rig, and he caught some fish. Nice smallmouth.
Okay.
Thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like I never thought about throwing a worm on that. I don't know why.
Especially a Senko, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I've Texas rigged a Senko before, so and it does kind of twitch well. It almost like a fluke almost if you do it. Right. So,
that might be a good thing to throw on Tokyo rig. Never thought about that.
I don't know if it would flint like kind of flinch or dart right with the weight. Well, like what weight do you usually use? I know I've seen them online when they show you. It's usually looks like a ginormous weight, but like I would think most of the time I would kind of shy away from that.
Well, so actually I use two weights, quarter ounce Wicked Weights Tracer tungsten weights.
Okay.
And I got this technique from Mike Heckinelli's YouTube. He'll oppose them to where like the cones are facing each other, or not the cone part, but the open part of the weight are facing towards each other, so they make that clacking sound underneath the water when you twitch it.
Almost like drawing a blank. What's the rig that has the BB in it, or the bead in it? Oh, Carolina rig.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like that. That might be a good idea too, to put like a glass bead in between them.
Interesting. So you got this big long wire. You might as well put it to use and put stuff in there, I guess.
Yeah. So overall, it's like half ounce that I'm throwing on it. So I mean, fishing it deep's super easy.
Yeah, because it definitely gets down there. And then, so what's your technique like?
So I'll cast out. I'll let it sink all the way down, and then I'll reel in the slack, and then I'll pop it, let it sink back down, and then I'll drag it maybe, let me see, my rod maybe from 11 to 8, I guess, if you're looking at clock kind of. Okay. And then I'll let it sit again, and then I'll start shaking the rod tip. Because if you can picture that bait with the weights on the bottom, you shaking your rod tip, you could just picture that bait just sitting here doing that, Right. So I think that kind of helps with how it fishes, to kind of visually see how it working in the water like that.
I always want to test in my neighbor's pool, but I'm always afraid to ask him because I don't want to screw up his line. But I feel like that would be so helpful. Like one of the YouTubers I was watching, he started doing a segment where he actually went to a pool and was doing that, was actually casting it and showing you what it looked like. And for the drop shot in particular, that helped me a lot because it made me realize that the more angle you have in your line, the lower your bait is to the bottom. So even if you have like a an 18-inch leader, if your angle of your line is super, sharp, then the bait's going to be just a little bit off the bottom. So if you want it to be higher in the water column, you have to fish it almost more vertically. And it makes sense now that I've seen it, but I'm like, oh yeah, that makes I didn't even think about that. I'm thinking, well, if I have an 18-inch leader, then it's 18 inches off the bottom, but it's not true.
That's actually a good point. I've never really thought about that. That's probably why I struggle with the drop shot, because I do cast it out and bring it back towards me.
And that's where this is. Yeah, same here. That's what I was doing for the longest time, and never had a lot of luck with it. But this, the Tokyo rig, obviously, what the length of your quote unquote leader is going to be pretty much set. So you're only going to be a few inches off the bottom, or maybe an inch or two. But that's definitely can make a big difference depending on what your bottom composition is and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. I've heard a lot of guys saying that the Tokyo rig shines in the fall when all the leaves are at the bottom, because that weight is going to sink in there, but your bait's still going to be up above the leaves doing its thing. You know what I mean?
Right. And you're not necessarily getting all the leaves stuck on your hook because they're kind of hanging around by the weight. So
yeah,
that's interesting. I'll have to remember that too.
Yeah, that's burned in my head. I think it might be Ike and Ellie. He has like a 4-part series on YouTube about this whole rig, man. And I watched the whole thing. I'm like, man, that was good. Good stuff.
Yeah, definitely for sure. So now we kind of talked about the when do you throw it, or kind of where do you throw it, what you throw on it, behind it. How about what's your setup for it?
Let me see. I'm using a Douglas 7'4", 7'4" fast tip rod. So that's stuff that I throw my jigs on. Texas rigged worms, spinner baits, chatterbaits, anything heavy like that.
Okay.
So I kind of want like that rod that has a real thick backbone. So if I'm setting the hook from deep, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're gonna get that good hook set.
That's
and then
casting too, right? A casting.
Yeah, bait caster.
Yeah. Yep.
I couldn't imagine throwing this thing on a spinning reel.
I'm definitely more accurate with the spinning reel. So when it comes to target shooting, then I might opt for it, but I don't know that I have a heavy enough rod to set the hook at 30 feet unless I'm using a bait caster, because most of my spinning stuff is on the lighter side. So
yeah, same here. Do you have a medium heavy bait caster?
Yep, I do. So I think
that'd be a perfect rod for it.
Yep. And at least I know if I'm going to fish the bridge pilings, I can just fire it at the bridge piling, let it hit it, and drop straight down.
That's exactly what I did yesterday.
I don't have to be super accurate. Not like throwing at the rocks, the margin of error is a lot smaller because you have, current flowing on either side. If you get it in the current, it's just going to come right back at you. But if you can hit it right behind that rock and get that sweet spot, then that's kind of, and I don't think I'm quite there yet with my casting ability, but I'm getting there.
Yeah, so, it takes a little while. You just got to dial in your reel and stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, it's funny. You casting towards like a bridge or something with the Tokyo rig. I've hit so many like abutments with it, and I'll come back and the wire's like bent 30 degrees, and so you got to bend it back.
I was throwing the Ned rig yesterday, and it would stick to the concrete. Like I'd have to pop it off the wall. So I'm like, it must be a rough surface, because I just cast at it and it would like stick.
That's funny. Well, I actually took Ryan Milford's advice last year. He Texas rigs his Ned rig on Shroom's head. So I started doing that. I don't lose as many. Same
here. I did the same thing, and that has helped my luck a ton. That's part of what I attribute to not snagging as much.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I wore out a Ned rig yesterday doing that. After like the 20th dink, it was kind of shredded at the part where I up at the hook keeper. Kept pulling down, and I'd super glue it, and it'd be good for another 5 fish. And then, I ended up having to get a new one. And after the 15th one, but it definitely held its own for a long time. And, I lose a lot less. So Yeah, thanks, Milford. That was a good tip.
It was. He's going to listen to that and be like, man, I didn't know I had such a influence on you guys. Don't let it get to your head.
Yeah. Well, that and I ordered a pack of EWG Ned rig heads from, I'm trying to think who that was. And I totally have no clue what I did with them. I remember seeing them. I remember opening them. And then I was like, they're gone. I have no clue.
Lifted jigs, probably?
Yeah, yes. And I looked all over everywhere I could possibly imagine I could have put them, and I cannot find them. So at some point I will order more. Because I feel like that's a easier solution. Well, a more, what's the word? A fancier solution than just kind of, rigging it on an angle. But that works in a pinch. So
don't, I like Z-Man stuff, but the Ned locks, the EWG Ned locks, I'm not a fan. The gauge wire they use for the hooks is too thick. So when I'm trying to set the hook with that thing, I found that I lose a lot more fish using a medium light rod because you just don't get that good hook set with the medium light.
Okay.
So I went back to the regular shrooms and started Texas rigging them again that way. No issues.
I still have a few of the what do they call? They had them for their craws where it has almost like a weight on the bend of the hook.
Oh, the belly weighted ones.
Yeah, and I've thrown the Ned rig on that a few times just because I was in a pinch and didn't have any more Ned heads because I got snagged and lost them all. But that kind of worked too because you can kind of Texas rig on that as well.
The bullets, that's what they
bullets. Yep. So, all right. How about line? Are you a braid to leader guy? Are you a straight fluoro, or what do you usually?
Straight fluoro. I don't like throwing braid to leader on bait casters.
Okay.
It is expensive. I don't use any backing or anything like everybody else does, but I also have like size 150 Shimano reels. So it's not, I'm using less than 200 yards on a spool anyway. I mean, but Seagar Red Label, that's what I've been using lately. I don't like anything more than 12 pounds of that stuff though. Any thicker, I just feel like it's hard to work with, and you just get way more memory than you would like the smaller diameter.
Okay. I've heard lots of complaints about Red Label, but I bought it this year when it was on sale, and now I only use it for leader because I don't do straight fluorocarbon. I might though, because the more people I talk to, that I hear a lot of people doing straight fluoro, but most of the time I use it for a leader, so I'm doing max like 20-foot sections of it, and I have no complaints for Red Label. It seems to be doing the job. So, and I bought 6, 8, 10, and 12 pound, maybe 15, and I have yet to have a problem with any of it. So,
no, I like it. I mean, you can't beat it. $14 or something, $14.99
right
for 200
now,
yards.
I saw Seagar has like a basics out now that I might try. Did you see that?
No, I haven't.
They have a new. I think they showed it at ICAST. They have it's supposed to be like their Econo line now. It's called Basics or Basics. Has the S at the end. But so I thought about giving that a try once I run out of the Red Label. But I kind of stocked up on the Red Label when it was on sale, so I have quite a bit of it.
Yeah, you can't beat it. I noticed that any line out there, you're gonna have a bunch of people that hate on it. So it just find something that works for you. Don't, if somebody says something sucks, don't let them convince you that it does suck. Try it out first. See if you like it. Right.
No, and like I said, I have no complaints, and I actually I had some Invisex, so that's what I was comparing it to, and I haven't seen a difference. Throwing both. Now I don't throw it in heavy cover a lot. Because I've been basically using it on the river. At the reservoir I fish where there's lots of laydowns and stuff. There's a lot more cover there, but I haven't used the Red Label over there as much. So that might be where I'd notice a difference. But for the river fishing, I really can't say that I've noticed a huge difference at all. So
yeah, so you mentioned braid. You'll get sensitivity with the braid, but it just seems like, I don't know what it is. I just don't like it on bait casters. I'm not sure why.
And maybe that's why my accuracy struggles, because I have braid to leader on my bait casters too. So
Yeah.
Now I finally got my first baitcaster with the digital or the digital braking, and that's helped me a lot because then I don't have the fear of backlasting as much. But
Shimano DC.
is that what I have? I have an SLX.
Oh, that's a good one too. That's going to be my next reel.
Yep. So
that's a great reel for cranking and stuff because it's so small profile. I mean,
yep.
I can sit there and crank with it all day and my hand don't cramp up.
Yep. And actually, that's what on Saturday, that's what I did because my arm, I noticed when I use my spinning rod all day, I kind of am holding the rod up in the air, for some reason. And then eventually my arm just gets tired. So when that happens and I can barely cast anymore, then I'll switch to my bait casting rods and start cranking. And it's weird. I must hold the rod completely different because it doesn't hurt and my arms aren't tired in that using those muscles. So
I'm struggling right now. I have a tennis elbow.
Oh, I had that for a while. That sucks.
And it's from fishing way too much, which is a good problem to have, I guess.
I remember asking my doctor what I could do to make it better, and she's like, "Well, you have to stop fishing." I'm like, "Well, guess that's not happening."
Yeah, I'm not doing that. It was I know the exact moment it happened. A few weeks ago, I was at the reservoir. I set the hook on it real hard after casting it real hard, and it just went. I'm like, oh yeah, that hurts. It's been sore ever since.
And that's kind of the same thing that happened to me. I went on a deep sea, not a deep sea, but a striper trip in the saltwater, and they had us throwing like 3/4 ounce jerk baits or just way heavier baits than I was used to. And I wasn't necessarily used to casting with that kind of weight. So a couple of bad casts where it like jerked my arm, and man, it was like a 6-hour trip. So just 6 hours of throwing that heavy weight. Yeah. I remember going out for lunch and I was like, oh man, my elbow is killing me. And that was it, man. For the rest of the summer, my arm was, I had that tennis elbow until I actually, slowed up a little bit on my fishing, and then it finally got better. And it's been good this year, but that sucks. I know that feeling, man.
Yeah, it's not going to get better for me when I stop fishing because I got a physical job too.
Yeah, no, my keyboard warrior job is definitely not as straining. My wrists are probably like crazy strong from.
That's funny. Man, I even got a swollen pinky finger right now from where I hold my reel and stuff.
I find myself switching where that trigger goes. As the day goes, because my hands get tired too. So
yeah, we're getting old.
Getting old sucks. Yeah. but no, it's definitely, I guess, a good pain to have. It means you're getting out there a lot. So
yeah, can't complain.
Well, cool, man. Anything else you think the people should know about Tokyo Rig?
Well, so I talked to one guy about it on Instagram. He throws it in super thick stuff, big thick laydowns, which I haven't done yet.
Okay.
He'll throw it in there like a flipping jig, he'll wiggle it in there, he'll drag it or whatever, and then if you don't get a bite, he'll reel it in real quick and cast that in another one.
Okay, so, almost like pitching it or flipping it, that kind of thing, or okay.
Yeah. I did try throwing it.
Figure it works like a punching rig almost at that point then. So.
Yeah, and that's supposed to be another reason that it's so good is to be able to throw it in that thick stuff and wiggle it down in the thick weeds. Which I've thrown it in the thick weeds. It doesn't work as good as I thought it was. I'm still bringing back a ton of weeds, but if I'm going to find like an isolated lily patch or something, even if it's like 4 feet deep or something, I'll pitch it in there and wiggle it,
Okay. Yeah. You feel like the hook, if you Texas rig properly, is not going to be what snags and pulls stuff back. So it's worth a shot, I guess. So
yeah, it's usually the swivel or the very end of the where you bend the wire to hold the weights. That's what usually grabs weeds and stuff.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's a way you could kind of hide that or not, but I don't know.
Either way, depending, you'd almost have to snip off what right at the or at the top of the weight.
Mm-hmm.
But even depending on how you have your weight, then it's going to catch on one end or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you could use like a barrel or like those what do they call it? It's not a bullet size or shape like mine. But it does have a hole the way through it.
Mm-hmm.
I've used them before, but on trying to think what application I use those for. But I have a few in my tackle box. So.
Yeah,
I guess
cool.
the Carolina I've used them on. So
Gotcha. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, it would be worth a shot. I mean, maybe it would bring up a little less grass, but I'm still, we have eelgrass here on the Susquehanna, and I don't think anything comes through that super clean. Like,
Yeah,
everybody's like, oh, throw a jackhammer, it'll come through the grass and clean. I'm like, not eelgrass.
yeah,
Eelgrass is like the most brittle friggin' stuff ever.
Yeah, I have trouble with that too. Just ripping any kind of bait through any kind of grass.
Right.
I know people say lipless crankbaits, ripping them through grass. I'm like, that don't sound fun.
The guy at my bait shop's like, oh yeah, even if it's crankbait, you get it hung up and then you rip it out. And I'm like, I would be ripping constantly, just rip. And yeah, I don't know.
Knowing my luck, I'd break the rod tip. Jeez.
Yeah. Now I bought those. There was a crankbait that came out that's supposed to come through grass better. It didn't make a difference for me on the Susquehanna anyway. So
yeah, that's cool. You guys got that grass though. I mean,
it is good, and I'm learning how to fish around it. Like fish the edges. That's been another key to my success is learning to fish grass lines and stuff. Now it's a lot easier when I can see them rather than have to rely on electronics to graph it and kind of figure out how to position myself without being able to see it. But on the river, when it's 5 foot deep and you can see it breaking the top of the water, it's real easy to figure out where the edge of the grass lines are. So
how deep is that grass usually?
It gets the whole way up, till where it's just kind of, pretty much the whole way up, and it doesn't stick out of the water because it lays over. It goes with the current, but pedaling through it is like concrete.
I believe it.
With my Hobie, I can make it through it, but if you had a prop, I don't know how you would get through it. Sometimes even if I'm tired of sludging through it, I'll just pull the pedals up and just paddle because it's way easier to coast over top of it than it is to pedal through it. So
yeah, we don't have any grass in the middle of our rivers like that. We got, I don't even know what kind of stuff it is all along the edges.
Okay,
it's rocky, and then we got like these. They're not reeds, but it's just some kind of thick grass, and they go up in there sometimes when it's muddy or something, but
right. Well, I'll have to take pictures of it sometimes because there's definitely spots where it's crazy thick, and I that's where I first started trying to throw the Texas rig with a pegged weight on it because I was like, oh, I'll just pull a weight through the grass, and I'm like, not through that grass. Occasionally you can kind of flip it into the ice, like in the middle of the grass, there'll be a spot where there's a rock. And so there's a hole right in the middle, and sometimes I'll pitch into that. But
I throw like a weightless something,
Yeah, or I've even tried a frog coming over the top of it, and, pausing when you hit those with varying degrees of success. Nothing was like, oh, that works every time, but enough for me to, if I'm stuck in the middle of a huge grass patch, I don't feel lost anymore. So
I think a fluke might be pretty good in there.
Yep. That's one nice thing because it goes right over top and doesn't, even if it kind of nestles down, it'll sit on top of it. It's one of the few things that won't actually kind of fall in and get stuck. It kind of lays on top of it because it's so light. But
or even a 1/8 ounce, like my favorite buzzbait, the 1/8 ounce tri-wing. That always works good on stuff that grows to the top.
Yeah,
because I mean, you hit like the grass patches or the lily pad patch, it just flips over and then keeps going when you get to an open area.
Okay, I'll have to try that. Lon Vroot was on, and he was one of the first guests that we had when I started, and he talked a lot about throwing the what bait did you just say?
The buzzbait.
Buzzbait, and pulling it right over through those when if you have a pool and then you have rapids and then another pool. If you pull it, start on the upper end in a slow pull it through the rapids, a lot of times it'll get slammed. And I have had luck with that. I just didn't try it in the grass. I didn't think to.
Yeah. That'd be my recommendation. I don't know. I like throwing the buzz bait anywhere like that, thick lily pads or something,
Okay. I
cool.
tend to shy away from that with that, but I will have to give it a try. So.
Yeah, I know there's one lake that comes to mind out here where I actually caught a 21-inch largemouth right in the middle of these lily pads on a buzz bait like 7 years ago.
Nice.
It's pretty cool.
That's one thing that most of the lakes right here by me don't have a ton of now.
Mm-hmm.
The youth camp that I go to up in the Poconos, that they had the lake up there has lily pads, and so that was fun to get to go up there and throw stuff in the lily pads and kind of see those blow ups and stuff that you always hear about. So that was cool.
Wow, that's so much fun. I love fishing lily pads.
So, all right, man. Well, I think we kind of covered a bunch of stuff. I'm trying to think of anything else we didn't cover. I think we're pretty good.
Tokyo rig, technique, line, rod, reel, where to throw it. Yeah, we hit a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. So, I guess, do you have? I'll give you a chance to shout out any sponsors or anything you have.
I haven't done this in forever, man.
Has your sponsors changed at all? I mean, what boat are you fishing out of now? You're back to
I'm still in the Bonafide. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll do two of them. So it's the first two that come off the top of my head. Loveland Canoe and Kayak. Thanks to Mark Bersani, man. He hooks me up with the demo boat every year, and it's awesome. So I don't get to keep it. I don't even own my own kayak. So that's the downfall.
So once it's gone, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, but I'll get another one. But
right.
Yeah, so thanks to him, and then Bending Branches. I'm kind of actually getting away from using the motor that I got for the kayak, and lately I've been paddling more, so I've been having a blast doing it.
Okay. I was gonna say your Instagram content has been top notch too. Some of your pictures and just the way you frame your pictures is unique a lot of times in your videos. I kind of stole your Brad Hicks slow motion release the other day.
That was a good one.
But yeah, I wanted to give you props for that. Where can people find you on social media?
I don't add very many people on Facebook if I don't know them. So
okay.
Instagram, Brad Hicks Fishing.
There you go. That's kind of what I was looking for. But yeah, because it's pretty. Your content is good.
Thanks, appreciate that.
Yeah.
I try to keep it entertaining. So cool. My wife can vouch for it. She probably thinks I'm a nut job when I'm messing around with my Instagram and stuff.
No, I think it shows that you put work into it, because it's not the standard content that you see, the fish shots that you see that everybody takes. Those are there too, but
fish selfies. I got a bunch of those.
Yeah, but that's good. But there are unique shots too, and that's kind of what I appreciate too. Sweet. And that's what made me think of your Bending Branches stuff, because you do include your paddles in your picture sometimes, and I think that's
I love their paddles, man. They're awesome.
All right, man. Well, thanks again so much for coming on and kind of keeping me company here as I'm flying solo. So I appreciate that. I do have a super big guest that I'm interviewing tomorrow night, actually. So tune in next week, guys, for probably one of the bigger names that I've talked to. I'm super excited about that. So you can find out who that is next week, but stay tuned for that. And so, Brad, thank you again, sir.
Heck yeah. Anytime. If you need a co-host, I'll jump on.
All right, man. I appreciate that. So everyone, thanks again for checking in. This has been the Bass Fishing for Noobs segment on the Paddle and Fin podcast, where we bring you the techniques, the tricks, and the tips to help you rip more lips. Good night, everyone.
Later, y'all.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle, the letter N, and fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle, the letter N, and fin at gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. Shout out to Jig Masters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com